When U.S. Representative Nancy Pelosi on January 4, 2007, assumed her role as Speaker of the House at the opening of the 110th Congress, she followed the pattern that had been set by George W. Bush and his old man, infusing a loaded statement concerning the Founding Fathers, saying they were so confident in the, quote, America that they were advancing, they put on the Great Seal, the Great Seal of the United States, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order for the centuries, end quote. Pelosi did not go into detail as to why she considered the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum important dialectic during the momentous changeover of the control of Congress, nor did she add why that expression exists beneath the unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye of Horus Osiris Apollo on the Great Seal of the United States in the first place. But her allusion to it was not coincidental. I believe it was framed against January 20, 2001, when her dynastic establishment president friend, George W. Bush, during his first inaugural address, faced the obelisk known as the Washington Monument, and twice referred to an angel that rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm, end quote. Now, his statement was credited to Virginia statesman John Page, who had written to Thomas Jefferson after the Declaration of Independence was signed, saying, "We know the race is not to the swift nor the battle to the strong. Do you not think that an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm?" End quote. Now, 5 weeks after Bush's inaugural, on Wednesday, February 28, 2001, Congressman Major R. Owens of New York stood before the House of Representatives, and he actually prayed to this angel in the whirlwind. He asked the spiritual force to guide the future and the fate of the United States. 28 weeks later, for a total of 33 weeks from the day of the inaugural, a number invaluable to mysticism and occult fraternities, 19 Islamic terrorists attacked the United States, according to the official story, hijacking 4 commercial airlines and crashing 2 of them into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. They slammed a 3rd into the Pentagon, and a 4th, which had been directed towards Washington, D.C., crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But what happened that day resulted in nearly 3,000 immediate deaths, at least 24 missing persons, and the stage being set for changes to the existing world order. Now, when Bush was giving his second inaugural speech 4 years later, he again offered cryptic commentary, saying, quote, "For a half century, America defended our freedom by standing watch on distant borders. After the shipwreck of communism came years of relative quiet, years of repose, years of sabbatical. And then there came a day of fire." End quote. A few paragraphs following that, Bush added this: "By our efforts, we have lit a fire as well, a fire in the minds of men. It warms those who feel its power. It burns those who fight its progress. And one day, this untamed fire of freedom will reach the darkest corners of our world." End quote. Now, this phrase, "a fire in the minds of men," is from Fyodor Dostoevsky's 19th century book, The Possessed, or The Devils, a novel set in pre-revolutionary Russia, where civil resistance is seen championed by nihilist Sergei Negev, who tries to ignite a revolution of such destructive power that society will be completely destroyed and then rebuilt. The fact that a United States president would quote this phrase in an official speech of record was astonishing to many analysts, given that The Possessed is about violent government crackdown on dissent that sparks civil unrest and revolution marked by public violence, something eerily reminiscent of today. Fire in the Minds of Men is also the title that historian James H. Billington chose for his famous book on the history of revolutions, including the origin of occult Freemasonry and its part in the American Revolution. In his closing comments, Bush himself tied the inaugural crypticisms to the Masonic involvement in the American Revolution, saying this, quote, "When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled," end quote. The phrase, "a new order of the ages," is of course taken from the Masonically designed Great Seal, the Novus Ordo Seclorum. And Bush further acknowledged that the secret society members were acting on an ancient hope, an ancient scheme that is meant to be fulfilled. Now fast forward to the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the surreal, illicit invocation to dark supernaturalism tied to those governing entities intent on fulfilling, as Bush prophesied, that ancient conspiracy from the Great Seal of the United States has been immediately revived. Right on cue, we find Democrat Representative Emanuel Cleaver, for instance, offering the congressional prayer opening up the 117th Congress in, quote, "the name of the monotheistic God Brahma, and God known by many names by many different faiths," end quote. Now, setting aside the numerous incorrect assumptions by Cleaver involving Brahma, the entreaty to such a Hindu god was actually highly appropriate, given that Vice President Kamala Devi Harris, her name also invokes deities from Hindu mythology, from which Brahma is taken, but except in her case, illusionary and destructive ones. From the surprising meaning of Kamala Harris's name at thelist.com, we discover that Kamala is another name of the well-known Hindu goddess who is probably better known as Lakshmi. Devi is a Hindu goddess as well. It's a Sanskrit word that means goddess, but it's also the name of the Hindu mother goddess. Devi is considered to encompass womanhood completely, but she does have a fierce side and is involved not only creating worlds, but destroying them as well. Kamala Harris's sister's middle name matches hers, Maya. Her middle name is Lakshmi. Maya is also a Sanskrit name meaning illusion, and is another name of Durga, a Hindu goddess. Now, the list goes on to explain that Kamala's mother, Shamala, chose those names specifically because, quote, "a culture that worships goddesses produces strong women," end quote. That's what she told the Los Angeles Times. Perhaps this explains why those strong women and men have taken to the streets of Portland, Oregon over the last 2 years to feed the spirit of chaos beneath the shadow of Portlandia, the second largest copper statue after the Statue of Liberty of a goddess in the United States. At 30 feet 10 inches tall and weighing 6.5 tons, if she was standing up, she would tower at approximately 50 feet high. The Portlandia Repose is located above the entrance of the City of Portland office buildings downtown, and it's implicative, actually, of the goddess of witchcraft, Hecate. Supposedly designed after Lady Commerce on the Portland City Seal, she holds a trident, considered of the utmost importance for sorcery and indispensable to the efficacy of infernal rites. She holds that under a six-pointed star, which is, of course, also an important instrument of dark arts and Hecatean witchcraft. Now, as occultists know, the metal, copper, that Portlandia is crafted from was sacred to ancient goddess worshippers. In early Rome, copper was called cyprium, due to being primarily mined from Cyprus, the birthplace of the goddess Aphrodite. It was also sacred to the sun god of Babylon and similar deities, some of whom required human sacrifice. A plaque beneath Portlandia offers disquieting connections between her influence over that city and the souls of those citizens that she reigns over. Here's what it says, quote, "She kneels down, and from the quietness of copper reaches out. We take that stillness into ourselves, and somewhere deep in the earth, our breath or souls become her city. If she could speak, this is what she would say. Follow that breath. Home is the journey we make. This is how the world knows where we are," end quote. So the pattern continues between some of America's recent national leaders whose invitations, unlike Donald Trump's habitual recognition of the Judeo-Christian God of the Bible, have been to dark supernaturalism for ruling over and guiding the souls and destiny of this nation into an occult world order. This now includes the new vice president, who could certainly become the actual president if acting Joe Biden, whom former White House stenographer Mike McCormick, who worked for Biden for 6 years, says has lost at least 50% of his cognitive abilities, becomes incapacitated or otherwise incapable of fulfilling his 4-year term, who bears the name of Hindu entities connected with illusion and the destruction of worlds. By the way, Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, upon witnessing the first detonation of the nuclear weapon on July 16, 1945, actually quoted the related Bhagavad Gita Hindu text declaring, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," end quote. Now, Joe Biden's name is likewise intriguing. In fact, a Jewish scholar points out that the Hebraic name for Joe Biden actually translates, alas, judgment, while other experts note that it beckons the arrival of a promised son, a Messiah, such as is reflected on the Great Seal of the United States of America. According to prominent Rabbi Ari Weingarten, who says Biden's name contains the letters Yud Dalid, this spells out the word Yad, or hand, and he tells us why this is important. There's an article at Israel 365 that explains. Rabbi Weingarten states that the first and last letters of Biden's name spell out the word Ben, meaning son, which hints at the process of Messiah, which will come through Messiah ben David, the anointed son of David, and Messiah ben Joseph, the anointed son of Joseph. Now, Rabbi Weingarten adds that the gematria, the Hebrew numerology of Ben, is 52, equaling the name of Elijah, the prophet who is the harbinger of Messiah. Now, here's something else he says. This is not to say that Biden is the Messiah or will announce the Messiah, but this is a reminder that even a path that we would rather not choose, that is, the election of Joe Biden, could be God's method to bring about the final redemption. Now, Rabbi Weingarten then notes the inner letters of the name of Biden, Yud and Dalet, and the gematria of those letters equaling 24. He goes on, quote, "Many times in the Bible, David's name is written with a Yud, bringing the numerical total of his name to 24. Biden's last name is coming to remind us that we are on the verge of Elijah's arrival to reestablish the Davidic dynasty," end quote. Now, the problem is, of course, for Christians and Messianic Jews, the Messiah already arrived in the New Testament. His name is Jesus. Therefore, the prophetic suggestion involving Biden's name most likely indicates a role that he could play with the coming of the false Messiah, the Antichrist. Even some Orthodox rabbis seem to agree with that, connecting the election of Biden and Kamala with the return of the days of Noah. Rabbi Joel Schwartz, the head of the Sanhedrin's Noahide court and a highly respected Torah law authority, produced a video in which he commented on the divergent possibilities of the U.S. presidential election. Here's a quote: "The elections were held on the 17th of Cheshvan." He says that, and then he makes us understand what this has to do with Jewish tradition, the 17th of Cheshvan being the start of the rains that caused the flood in the time of Noah. They began falling on the 17th of Cheshvan. He goes on, quote, "It was also on that day that here in Israel, the first rains of the season fell in earnest. They should have been rains of blessing, but since Biden was elected, these rains became like the rain on the same day in the time of Noah, a harbinger of the coming flood." Rabbi Schwartz adds, quote, "The Democrats are spreading the very same sins that forced Noah into the ark," end quote, while another rabbi similarly notes that in Hebrew, Haris means destruction. With Trump out of the way, at least for the time being, the dark side of the deep state is quickly reviving efforts to refill the swamp and to get America back on track to its secret destiny, summoning those agents of chaos whose ancient scheme will culminate in arrival of the dreaded man of sin. Joe Biden himself pledged allegiance to this new world order in a Wall Street Journal op-ed titled How I Learned to Love the New World Order, in which he detailed his vision of surrendering American sovereignty to a new global government via the United Nations. He said, quote, "Most Americans, myself included, reject 1930s-style isolationism. They expect to see the strong hand of American leadership in world affairs, and they know that many security threats require global solutions," end quote. Will Biden's vision quickly unfold in the countdown to Zeitgeist 2025? People who are not governed by God will be ruled by tyrants, said William Penn, the founder of the English North American colony, the province of Pennsylvania. And for all those now bidding the return of old Saturn or Jupiter's reign, we would also remind them of the ancient Greek tragedian Sophocles, whose warning was this: those whom Jupiter wishes to destroy, he first deprives of reason or drives mad. But that said, it appears that left-leaning Americans are nevertheless rushing to embrace the newly appointed zeitgeist gods, and this was actually vividly illustrated on the spring 2021 cover of Jacobin, a leading voice of the American left offering socialist perspectives on politics, economics, and culture, where the apotheosis of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, with Hillary Clinton, are accompanied by lesser Elohim, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, portrayed as angels. Biden's larger-than-life, bare-chested figure is shown surrounded by holy spirits of Twitter and saints. The latter include kneeling Democrat leaders in the U.S. Congress, Dr. Anthony Fauci, fawning journalists and manager-class devotees eagerly consuming the holy scripture from what is probably the latest Barack Obama memoir. The former president himself is shown as a six-winged seraphim, bracketed by the likewise angelic Obama, Hillary, and Bill Clinton, with the trio gazing benignly from the heavens. A crowd of mask-wearing suburban laymen on earth celebrate Biden's ascension.